FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
We're joined right now by Congressman John Shimkus from the nation's capital. Congressman, how are you?
Mark, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you. I understand you've been involved even today, or maybe will be later today, on the markups on this new health care bill.
People can go to C-SPAN and go to the Energy and Commerce Committee, and we're marking it up right now as my friends are in the Ways and Means Committee are doing the same thing. So, yeah, I just got pulled out of the hearing room as we're in the process. So
what does that mean exactly? When you say marking it up, what are you doing today?
That's when you present the bill. You take amendments to either change the bill. You vote them up and vote down, and then you move the bill out of the committee to the next stage in the process. There's two committees have what we call primary responsibility, and that's Energy and Commerce. We have the Medicaid portions, and it's kind of interesting in your listening audience. You got Missouri, that's not a state that expanded, and you have Illinois that is a state that expanded. So there's some interesting dynamics there. And then the Ways and Means really are the ones who are doing the eliminating the taxes and then moving that money into, for lack of a better word, it's called a stability fund. I call it a high risk fund, and doing those other procedures. Then those two bills will be married together by the Budget Committee next week, if all goes well, and then that bill will then get to the floor, in week 3.
Lots of controversy over this so far. I know I listened to Congressman Jim Jordan. I've listened to some other folks who aren't sure this bill is everything they were hoping for. Where do you stand on it?
Well, you never have a perfect piece of legislation, but this is our only opportunity to repeal and replace Obamacare. Obamacare is in a death spiral. Premiums are up, deductibles are high, people are forced to pay for insurance that they can't use, and the private insurers are leaving markets. I mean, Humana just left. You've got 25% of the counties had a 40% increase in premiums. I mean, so that the basic premise is Obamacare has failed. So now, how do we fix it? My friends, like those you quoted, they want to repeal and then move to work on replacing, but 2 months ago, they said you got to do it at the same time because there's provisions in there where you can't leave people. I mean, if you just repeal for the state of Illinois, then all those people who had Medicaid expansion lose their Medicaid coverage. So that's where you hear that if we do that without having a replacement, there's 12 million people you put on the uninsured rolls. Now, I'm not sure we really want to do that, regardless of what my friends in those different groups say. So this is a way to really repeal and replace, and I would say this is what the president is asking us to do.
So let me talk to you about this stability fund for a minute. Is this designed to fund people who are higher risk,
exactly.
who are going to have to pay higher premiums?
Unless you use a stability fund. These are not new ideas. Many states have what they had called high-risk pools.
Right.
And so you require people to pay into the insurance, hopefully at regular, market rates, and you subsidize the risk or the delta with taxpayer funds. So you give people access to coverage. The biggest concern I have is for my constituents who have pre-existing conditions. And I get that. You don't wish that on anybody. So the stability fund is there to address that. We had the HHS director from Wisconsin testify a couple weeks ago, and Obamacare destroyed their high-risk pool, which was more efficient and cheaper and covered more people.
Is it you said it's about $100 million is being put into that fund. I mean, is there anything to control those expenses moving forward?
Well, it's going to be based upon the needs of the states and what the states are doing.
Right.
We want to empower states. We believe in cooperative federalism, and the high-risk pools are really a creation of the states to cover people with pre-existing conditions.
And I'm assuming that dollar amount was arrived at through some thought process?
Well, and remember, this is the budget reconciliation process. So this money is already money that would be spent elsewhere.
Okay.
Now we're changing the dynamics through the reconciliation process. We're taking money that was going to be spent on, the Obamacare maintenance and education fund, and it's just going to be moved into another an operation. So it's really not. People think, we're spending more money. We're not. A budget reconciliation has to be revenue neutral.
We're talking to Congressman John Shimkus, who's actually working on this health care bill today and what they call the markup of it in Congress. So here's a question. I understand this repeals most of the taxes involved in Obamacare, but the one article I read said that it leaves some of the insurance regulations intact. Can you tell me what that means exactly?
Well, I think the stated coverage. So, like the part of the what was resounding in Obamacare and even before in Republican pieces of legislation, we already talked about people with pre-existing conditions. We haven't talked about insurers being able to have capitated amounts.
Okay,
right? So you get sick, you have certain amounts of expenses, then the insurance company says, "All right,
you've hit your limit.
We're done with you." And you may have more and more expenses after that. So it's those type of things that have been well vetted. Democrats historically have supported, Republicans have historically supported, and that's ensuring that when people buy insurance, they should have the comfort that this insurance is going to cover them.
Sure, but it does get rid of things like those 10 requirements for a policy where an 80-year-old man is having to pay for contraceptive coverage even though he doesn't need it, or a woman. It gets rid of that, right?
See, this is in 3 buckets. This is what people have to understand is that, bucket 1 is the process we're going through now, which is called reconciliation. And we've got to be careful. We can't overreach on that because then the Senate parliamentarian will say, it's not germane. This whole process is dead. So we got to be very, very careful and only doing those things that we can do. A lot of this determination of policy in the coverage plan and programs are going to be done by Secretary of the HHS, Dr. Price. The law allows the Secretary of HHS to have like 2,000 provisions to tweak and change the way these debates that we're having now. He already did it last week on the insurance stabilization report and policy. So we expect him to be very active and probably the major player in repeal and replace.
Okay. Well, good. Well, Congressman, listen, I know you're busy today. I appreciate you stepping out to talk to us about this. And as this process moves forward, I'd love to catch up with you again maybe next week.
Yeah, we're probably going to be doing this for the next 18 hours. So.
Oh.
Yeah, don't ask me tomorrow. I'm sleeping, but
yeah, I'll bet.
But yeah, I'd be happy to talk through it.
Congressman John Shimkus, 15th District over in Illinois. Thanks for your time.
All right, take care.
All right, thank you very much for your time. Yeah, good to get him on there. See, he kind of answered some questions that a lot of us still have about this bill, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on this moving forward.